Welcome to the October edition of BBRO BeetCast. I'm Francesca Broom, your host and Knowledge Exchange Manager for BBRO. As the cold nights draw in, the harvesters are now rolling, and in a moment we'll catch up with Stephen Aldous to find out what he thinks is in store for us all. But first, let's speak to Professor Mark Stevens for a quick pest and disease update. So thanks for joining me today, Mark. We're going to obviously look at the crop and some of the issues that we have at the moment, and also we'll have a look at a little bit further ahead at the activities that BBRO are about to commence. So firstly, plant clinic. We normally are really busy in the summer and it goes quieter around this time, but not necessarily the case this year, is it?
Afternoon, Ches. I can't believe it's October. A slight chill in the wind and the factories are starting to gear up into action. But with regard to plant clinic, it's been a strange season because the peak is normally in June, but we didn't have too many samples in there. But we've had quite a lot through August and September, primarily driven by virus yellows, the beet moth, which we'll come back to later, and foliar diseases. But the ones that we're just starting to see in the last week or two are one or two root rots coming into the crop, combination primarily of fusarium, possibly some rhizoctonia in there as well. I think it's down to the crop being under stress as the season's progressed. We are aware of some crops and roots in crops cracking, and any sort of opportunity for these pathogens to get into roots, they've taken the opportunity. So, also seeing some violet root rots as well. If we get any water sitting in crowns or hollow crowns, that can then lead to opportunistic bacteria to come in, things like penicillin. So we do need to be mindful of that as we're now starting to lift the crop, because if there are issues, it will need to be watched. You can certainly keep an eye on that on mouse clamps or any clean a load of spoilage heaps. And if you see some rotten roots, then make a note of it. And if it's more significant, it's important to talk to your contract manager. One to watch as we go through the autumn into early winter.
So you just mentioned that you're seeing some beet with cracks. What's causing that? Is that the fact we now had rainfall? Is the beet suddenly putting on the weight and it's cracking?
It's often very difficult to say, but it's down to stresses, and it could be down to soil type, it could be down to rapid growth, it could be down to a whole host of factors. But whatever happens and you get cracks in the beet, because you've got to remember some of these beet were probably under drought stress, and all of a sudden under the heavy rain events have absorbed a lot of water, that could lead to differential growth in the root and cracking or whatever, and restrictions in soil. Anything like that then opens up an opportunity for, as I said, all these different fungi and bacteria.
And obviously we've seen a lot of the beet moth, and we are a bit concerned that with that we're going to see more root rots if there happens to be a hollow in the centre. So that's another thing that we need to be watching out for. Can you just tell me a little bit more about the beet moth and what you're seeing?
So it's been a developing situation. If we go back to the beginning of August, when we had a plant clinic sample into BBRO Norwich, where we had a bag of leaves, crowns and a bag of weevils, we weren't quite sure what was going on, but that was clearly the beginning of something really quite significant, and something that we're going to have to be very mindful of going into future years. But what we have been seeing, these larvae that have been mining in the crowns, into the petioles, into the leaf, and these larvae are of the beet moth that I think we've imported from mainland Europe, and they just like the warm hot conditions, and the dry conditions have enabled it to really establish, particularly in the berry area along the A14 corridor. But what is concerning is it's expanding from that now, and we are aware of beet moth probably in all 4 factory areas, although clearly the worst damage we're seeing is the berry factory area.
And Mark, we've seen the pest before, but not to this degree, have we?
Well, in 30-odd years of being in the industry, I've never seen anything like it. Yes, we did see it a couple of years ago near Sudbury, 1 or 2 fields there, low-level beet moth in September. And although it caused a little bit of damage, I don't think it would have caused any yield loss. We are seeing widespread attack, and every planting field's been affected. And if you haven't been in your beet fields and you are concerned, it is worth looking and going for a walk, and it's very obvious. Look in the heart leaves, and if the heart is black, will be the sign that the caterpillar's been eating the heart leaves, and what you're getting is the feces, the frass that are depositive, and you can get anywhere up to 6 to 8 larvae per plant. We have seen a situation where probably 2 or 3 weeks ago we were about 2 or 3% in a particular field. We've gone back to that field, and now every plant within the field is affected. So it's trying to now work out the impact on yield. I have been talking to colleagues right across Europe, and because we're not alone with the severity of it this year, but if the plant are not able to grow away from the damage, and then we get sort of disease attacking the older leaves, then that really is going to compromise growth and sugar content. What we are starting to see, though, in some fields is that we are getting secondary growth. The problem is we've lost the growing point, which is leading to multi-crowning, and those leaves are nothing like potentially what would have been there. So it really is a steep learning curve for us all. There's not much in the literature, there's not much science that we can base it on, as you've probably seen in the bulletins and comments that BBR have been putting out. Probably the best control strategy for us is heavy rain events, irrigation, cooler weather. The insecticides that may be of value really are struggling to control the problem because the larvae are well protected in the plants, and you just can't get the chemistry to it. So, we just need to be mindful of that, particularly at harvest, because what we don't want to do as the harvester goes through the fields is those crowns that may get depositive, or any petioles that have got larvae in, and we don't get a cold winter and they remain in the field or on cleaner loader heaps, and then become a problem for 2023.
So for the growers that are only just seeing the first signs, being potentially first generation, there shouldn't be much damage and hopefully yield will recover, but they can't be complacent, can they? They've still got to make sure they keep on top of the hygiene.
Yeah, fingers crossed it isn't a problem for those growers, but it is worth just checking, because you need to know for future. And BBRO are trying to understand the extent of the problem, so any information you can provide us will be gratefully received, and we're just trying to map the extent of it at the moment.
And also we've seen a number of the crops struggling a little bit with drought and obviously virus, and that links into secondary infections as well. So what are you seeing at the moment in the way of virus results?
So we're just coming to the end of a relatively large screen for determining the levels of virus. We haven't quite finished it yet. But we've been collecting leaves from all the sites where we did all the aphid monitoring, and the yellow water pans, and some of the sites that were part of the specific field survey that British Sugar are running. And the final results will be presented at the BBRO Winter Conference in February next year. But interestingly, from the samples that have been coming in, some of them aren't virus, which sort of reflects the challenges of the season. Mm-hmm. So not everything that's yellow is virus. But at the moment, beet yellows is the most predominant yellowing virus from our tests, and we know that's the more aggressive of the 3 viruses. So, keep an eye on that, because we'll position all the data together. But on the whole, virus yellows aren't probably as severe as they could have been, given all the information we provided in March. And I think that's a testament to the seed treatments minimising the potential impact of virus yellows through April, May and June.
Yeah, and again, it's a point, don't get complacent because there hasn't been much around. It is about the control measures that were introduced and how well growers have responded to that.
Yes, definitely.
For those of you concerned about the beet moth, Mark has produced a video that is available on our website. Please look under our news. And as he's mentioned, monitoring your crop over the next few weeks will be critical in protecting your yield potential at harvest. So let's catch up with Stephen Aldous to hear what he thinks harvest has in store.
So here we are, Stephen. October's now upon us, but we haven't actually been able to get in the field yet and lift anything, have we? When are you hoping to start?
So trial-wise, we will hopefully start first week of October. We have some strict deadlines to get trials uplifted and data turned around ready for next season's trials. So we'll be into the NL and RL trials through October and November. Conditions, thankfully, have improved for lifting. fairly constant rain showers now, and ground conditions are at a point where we think that the trials machines will work effectively and we'll get full root recovery. So
You've talked about NLRL, so I know it's national list and recommended list, but what is the actual difference when it comes to trial?
to look at, if you're in the field with them, essentially they're the same. It's just at the stage of the process they're in, coming to breeders and then to be recommended to you as growers.
So anyway, you're going to be starting lifting these next week. You said the ground conditions are better. Have you seen any beet being lifted commercially anywhere else?
Yeah, so obviously we're based at Downham Market, so there's beet going past into Wissington at this point, and several harvesters in the area have started and haven't had much feedback, but seems positive so far.
So what do you think of the conditions that we're now left with?
It's nice to see obviously canopies upright, hopefully topping and scalping's made slightly easier, and ground conditions, I know it's very variable and soil types, etc., but typically from what I am hearing and seeing, that there is sufficient moisture to get shear depth and get the roots out well.
We've done a number of the demo farms of late, and I know we've certainly seen a varying crown height on there. So what do you think? I mean, obviously it won't have changed. What are you recommending for growers?
That situation still remains. So yes, we've got a huge variance in crown height within a single field. So with commercial machines and mechanical scalping arms, we just need to be very conscious of how much we're taking off. My advice is always focus on those large roots which are protruding out of the ground. We don't want to be taking too much off. I think we all want to recover as much yield as possible, and that's one of the easiest and quickest ways to make sure we are doing that.
And actually, if you leave it a little bit green top, it's not a major issue now as you go through a clean loader, and it usually takes off, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm never the most popular person with the hauliers when there's a lot of green in the heat, but yes, generally by the time it gets to factory, the clean loader's removed it. A little caveat, if you are direct loading or you're moving beet really quickly this time of year, just be slightly conscious of how much green material, because it can be very fresh and not removed. But typically if it's going to sit in the heat for a few days, daytime temperature is still warm, it'll come off fairly easily.
And we've just heard from Mark a little while ago about the issues with the virus at the moment, and we've got some beet that are starting to crack, and we obviously want to avoid having rots setting in. So if people are lifting, what are you recommending is just in time if possible, but if you have got to store, what do you think people should be doing?
Again, although temperatures have dropped, it's still not cold, still plenty warm enough for storing beet. So again, just large surface area of the clamp, try to move it as little as possible. If you can tip it and leave it without pushing up, and doing the minimal possible really. We don't want to be pushing up, we don't need to be levelling off with tail boards. There isn't a frost risk at this point. Hopefully you've been in contact with your haulier, either through British Sugar or direct, and they'll be moving very quickly. But yeah, just maximum airflow at this point. Again, if you are seeing any root rots or you're cautious, again, trying to get just in time with that. Speak to your contract manager with British Sugar and make sure that is a priority going into the factory so we can make the most of that.
Yeah, and that really reiterates what Mark was saying earlier about any of the root rots and those have got really bad cases of beet moth. Although that seems to be superficial on the actual beet, because the crown is damaged, get a lot of rain, the water will be sitting and it could cause rots in future. So I think this year is very much keep a close eye on your crop, monitor and lift as and when you need to. Don't leave it in too long if you've got an issue there.
Definitely a year to be astute with those observations. Make sure you're out and looking, and as soon as the harvest is into it, check those roots and make the most of the factories needing beet at this point. So.
Yeah, lovely. Oh, well, thanks very much for that, Stephen. Maybe we'll catch up with you later on.
Yeah, definitely long season ahead yet, so we'll see how this all works out.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
For any of you wishing to improve your knowledge of sugar beet, we are running the Advanced Sugar Beet course over 3 days in January, details of which are available on our website under events and also via the advisory bulletin. And just like the advisory bulletin, this BeetCast carries basis points. So for 1 point, the reference number you require is CP/12266/2223/K. For those of you about to start lifting in October, good luck and thank you all for listening.